All right, here we go. Today we have Lil Tim, who's most known for protecting his friend Quando Rondo with deadly force when Quando was attacked unprovoked by King Von in Atlanta in 2020. When we first spoke a couple years ago, Tim was still being charged for the shooting, so I waited until all the charges were dropped before reaching out for an interview. Well, those charges have all been dropped, so now we can speak about it. So long last, welcome to Vlad TV.
For sure.
Well, it's your first time here. I want to start at the very beginning. So, you grew up on the east side of Savannah?
Yeah, I grew up on the east side of Savannah. Yeah.
Okay, and you were raised by your mom and your grandmother?
Yeah, I raised my mom and my grandmother.
Okay, how many kids were there altogether?
Staying with grandma's house, you had really just my mom kids, so it's like just me, my two brothers on my mother's side, and my sister on my mother's side, as kids wise.
Okay, and what was your relationship with your dad?
Relationship good. It's just like he was always there for like sports and stuff. I didn't live with him, but the relationship's still good. He tries his best like to be there when he can and stuff like that. Not saying like he wasn't missing in my life or nothing like that, but I just didn't stay with him and be with him all the time. But we for sure kept a good relationship.
Well, you said that growing up, your family didn't have it all, but you weren't living in poverty at the time.
Yeah, it was stuff like that. You know, like stuff that you want, you probably couldn't get everything, but I wouldn't say like it was the bare minimum, but you couldn't get everything you wanted, though.
What do you think during that time was the hardest thing you had to deal with growing up?
At that time, well, I wouldn't say elementary. I couldn't really say because I don't think I was like at that point where I really understand where everything was going on. But it's like in middle school, it's like you got some kids who got different pair of shoes to go to school with every day, and you don't. So you got shoes to go to school with, but you don't have a different pair every week. And then you got other kids who get a new pair of shoes every week, and you still wearing like your same shoes that you started school year with. So it's kind of be like you kind of wanted to get a little more clothes and stuff, or have more, but you really just had to take care of what you got and go from there. Yeah, like that type stuff at the beginning.
Well, you said that in the beginning you were actually into sports a lot, football, basketball, etc.
Yeah. Like elementary to probably like to middle school, I ran track, played football, and played basketball. Yeah.
Well, you said that at one point you started getting caught up in the streets, and then all the sports stuff started going out the window.
Well, I kind of started getting caught up with it a little bit, like middle school and high school, but it's like I still played sports, but it was interfering a little bit, but I didn't lose like football because I really love football, so I still played football all my years, but I was interfering in the streets a little bit though.
Okay, at what age did you really start getting mixed up in the streets?
Well, not really like me asking my mom and stuff like, can I get these shoes every week? Can I get a new pair of Jordans? Can I get a new...
Do you want to see how much money you're eligible for? If you were in a car crash within the last 2 years, that was not your fault.
A pair of Jordans and not getting them made me kind of start interfering and getting into like the streets a little bit. So I was like probably in middle school, I started like doing stuff I ain't had no business doing. And then that would kind of made me like kind of sneaky and stuff because I ain't want people to know what I had going on. So I just did it on my end. And if you just knew, you knew, but it's like, it's not nothing I wanted nobody to know about. And it's like I wasn't doing it just to do it. I was doing it to get stuff I wanted. But at the time, it's like, I know I'm supposed to be doing it, but it's kind of making me happy because I'm finally getting what I really want.
During that time, were you getting arrested at all or no?
Nah, I wasn't getting arrested at all. So it's like I wasn't learning my lesson.
Okay, so at what point did you meet Quando Rondo?
I met Quando like I met him a time before, but this didn't made us like my first time meeting him was probably like high school, but like beginning of high school around like 13, 14, 15 and all that. But that wasn't our first time meeting him, wasn't what made us real close. It was just a meet like, oh, this song so, this song so, and it kept going like that. But then it's like as time was going by, before he was blowing up in the rap and stuff, he was already rapping. And we just started like kept coming around each other and getting close like that. Now it's around no type of age though, like 14, 15 and stuff like that.
Right, and Rondo had been rapping by that time for years because he had been going through the juvenile system and rapping,
Right.
In juvie and everything else like that. So by the time you met him, was he kind of polished in terms of his style?
In the city wise, not big wise, but in the city wise, people know him like he rap or he's trying to blow and rap or he like trying to get off in the music. Like when I first met him, he was already rapping, already acapella, like already beating a job like that. His name wasn't big, but in the city he was known for rapping though. But they was also knowing him as always getting in trouble. So some people didn't take him as serious because they looked at him like he's going to be a waste because he's going to throw his life away.
Well, right, because Savannah really doesn't have a long history of hip hop artists that have really blown up.
Right.
I mean, Camouflage was on his way, but then he ends up getting killed in 2000. So he never really got his full potential. So there's really not a lot of other rappers to look up to and kind of model yourself after.
Right.
So Quando was kind of the only one at the time.
Right.
Now, Lil Pop, when'd you meet him?
I met Paul before I met Quando, so I met Paul probably like I want to say like I met Paul probably like 11, 12 years old. Something like that. About 12 years old, I knew Paul. I met Paul.
Okay, and Pop is Quando's cousin.
Right.
What was Lil Pop like?
Paul is like a person, his mom only child, who gonna try to take care of the family, a hustler, a money getting type nigga, independent, don't like depending on nobody type of person. He's that type.
Were you guys pretty close?
Yeah, we was close. He was close, my boy.
Yeah, I'm sorry for your loss, man.
It's all good, man.
All yours.
How do you sleep at night?
On the mattress from Mattress Firm. They have a low price guarantee, so I sleep.
All right, here we go. Today we have Lil Tim, who's most known for protecting his friend Quando Rondo with deadly force when Quando was attacked unprovoked by King Von in Atlanta in 2020. When we first spoke a couple years ago, Tim was still being charged for the shooting, so I waited.
They got Dirk.
The feds do not pick up a case unless it's a slam dunk.
A rapper's alleged revenge. The FBI exposing a network of crimes, including a murder-for-hire plot that they say Dirk Devontae Banks ordered. They say he wanted Quando Rondo dead.
I think maybe he was quiet for a reason.
The guns, cars, credit cards, and flights that the feds say are all linked to Dirk. And was there really a snake in the grass amongst his own group, OTF? A snitch wearing a wire? We've got a lawyer breaking this all down for us. I'm Justin Carter in Chicago. This is TSR Investigates. This case is extremely complex and expected to take months, if not years, to try in court. But before we get into this alleged murder-for-hire plot, how do we get here in the first place? Well, the FBI says on November 26, 2020, is when things really popped off. King Von, a rapper and friend of Lil Durk, and rapper Quando Rondo, they got into a fight at an Atlanta nightclub. It was captured on surveillance. We're not showing the whole thing because it is graphic, but police say that Rondo's friend pulled a gun and shot King Von several times, killing him. Authorities say that Dirk made it known that he would pay a bounty to anybody willing to kill Rondo. Well, 2 years later, that murder-for-hire plot allegedly came together. It was captured on camera. Listen closely. That's Georgia-born rapper Quando Rondo, whose real name is Tyquan Bowman. He was frantic, hysterical. August 19, 2022, he and his cousin, Saviah Lil Pab Robinson, were shot at this Beverly Hills gas station. You can see the Cadillac Escalade they were in shot up. Can I get some space, please? First responders pulled Lil Pab out and tried to save him, but it was too late. He died. Rondo wasn't injured.
The suspects still on the run.
And the suspects approached from the alley, got out of the car, and started shooting at those victims.
Those suspects we found out last week were members of the OTF music group. It stands for Only in the Family, a group that Lil Durk started. The shooting suspects, Kavan Vonnie Grant, DeAndre D.D. Wilson, Keith Flocka Jones, David Brown Eyes Lindsay, and Asa Boogie Houston.
The federal government is way different. The way they do their indictments and the way that they do their discovery and their timelines
I thought that was
are
Tiffany
extremely
Haddish.
more detailed, and they're quick.
Defense attorney Kayla Bumpus isn't connected to the case, but she does know the players involved.
Once you go federal, they pretty much have their case in chief.
She walked us through the federal court records filed just last week. On August 18, 2022, according to the complaint, Dirk's associates learned that Rondo was staying at a Los Angeles hotel. That day, Wilson, Jones, Lindsay, Houston, and a fifth unnamed suspect all flew from Chicago to San Diego. Quote, using a credit card associated with OTF. Co-conspirator 3 would purchase airline tickets for the co-conspirators to fly to California and murder Quando Rondo. Also that day, Dirk sent this text message to an associate, quote, don't book no flights under no names involved with me, end quote. Once all the alleged players got to LA, the OTF members met Kavan Grant, who had already flown there by private jet.
In the indictment, they talk about who purchased those ski masks and that they were purchased the day of the alleged murder.
That would be Grant, a top OTF associate who investigators say got the men hotel rooms, went to a sporting goods store, bought 4 ski masks, and rented 2 luxury cars, a white BMW sedan and a white Infiniti sedan. Grant allegedly gave them guns, including one that had been converted also into a machine gun. The next day, they allegedly made their move. The group followed Rondo and Robinson as they ran errands through Los Angeles. Their final stop was this Beverly Hills gas station. The suspects got out, opened fire into the Escalade, killing Robinson, who was standing outside the car. They missed Rondo, though. They went to an In-N-Out restaurant where they allegedly discussed payment and flew home. DeAndre Wilson allegedly paid them an undisclosed amount also for the crime. And that's where the federal charges stem from. Grant, Jones, Lindsay, Wilson, and Houston were all arrested last Thursday in Chicago on a list of serious weapons charges and conspiracy to commit murder for hire. Dirk was also arrested on the same day in Miami.
I know that them being arrested probably prompted some fire to him as well, because they were arrested before he was arrested.
And that's where it gets tricky. Investigators said in part, quote, that after law enforcement made the arrests and executed search warrants in Chicago, the FBI learned that Dirk had been booked on 3 international flights scheduled to leave the United States. One to Dubai, one to Switzerland.
And then he had booked a private jet from Miami to Italy. And on his way to board that private jet is where he was arrested.
Arrested before he could even board.
Why would you do that?
I want this! Jason is really fired up for the Cinnamon Toast Crunch Challenge. Look at him.
Spoke to the Law and Crime Network about this. He told host Jesse Weber that Dirk may not have been trying to flee, though.
Dubai is going to extradite you. Switzerland's going to extradite you. These countries are going to extradite. You know, the only places that don't extradite are like you go to Vietnam, you go to Morocco. It was unusual that there were so many booked, right? What's not unusual is sometimes where an individual doesn't know whether or not there's a warrant out for their arrest. And I've seen this before happen in the past, where some associates get arrested, and in order to see whether or not they have a warrant, because that's not public knowledge whether or not they have a warrant, they'll book an international flight, and it'll red flag them, and then they'll get a call from the FBI, or their lawyer will get a call, and they'll say, like, hey, your client's red flagged. They're trying to leave the country, just so you know. They're under investigation or XYZ. And you find out information you wouldn't necessarily find out.
We did reach out to Dirk's representatives for a comment. We're still waiting to hear back. No attorney information, though, has been listed for the other defendants. Now, it is important to note, too, that several blogs and media outlets claim that OTF Jam, whose real name is Casey Hester, is listed by name in the indictment as a police informant, many claiming that he was wearing a wire around Dirk for years to assist police in gathering evidence. Now, we've read all federal court documents related to this case, and OTF Jam was not listed or named in any of them. Dirk and the other defendants named, they are being held right now pending transfer back to Los Angeles. We even saw Dirk's father, he showed up in court over the weekend for his first court appearance. Now, Dirk and the other defendants right now, if convicted, they could face a maximum statutory sentence of life in prison. Of course, we'll be following this. For TSR Investigates, I'm Justin Carter.
Yeah.
Hello, roommates, and thank you for watching our YouTube channel. Do you want more TSR Investigates? Be sure to subscribe and check us out at theshaderoom.com.
Did you know you could be entitled to a 5- or 6-figure payout if you were in a traffic collision within the past 2 years? Yes, even if you weren't the driver. Just click on the link around this video to discover how much you're entitled to. Fill out a free 30-second quiz and you're done. Because if you've had to miss work or been hurt by a motorist in the past 2 years, you may be owed money and you don't even know it. It could be a 5, 6, or even 7-figure settlement. Simply click the link to find out. Over 25,000 accident victims have recovered $15 billion collectively with free case evals without stepping foot in a courtroom, paying excessive legal fees,
Facts.
or having to navigate the insurance gauntlet all.
But they said that they said it was fake, though.
Another rapper federally indicted, and these charges couldn't be more serious. The government claims that rapper Lil Durk ordered a hit on arrival in retaliation for the death of a close friend. The U.S. attorney calls it a cold-blooded murder. The twists and turns of this case can get a little complicated, but we're going to talk about it all with an attorney who has a lot of experience defending high-profile rappers.
Yeah.
Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Hey everybody, this is a Law and Crime legal alert. A mother was recently awarded millions of dollars in a lawsuit against baby formula manufacturers after her premature baby was diagnosed with necrotizing enterocolitis, or NEC, after receiving bovine-based formula. The lawsuits allege that Enfamil and Similac premature formulas, they are linked to NEC, but the manufacturers, they failed to warn the public of the risks and targeted them with false advertising. So if your premature baby was diagnosed with NEC after they were fed Enfamil or Similac, you may qualify for compensation. And one of our legal sponsors is partnering with Wagstaff Law Firm. This is a national firm renowned for their expertise to ensure that eligible claims are thoroughly presented. Visit babyformula.damages.com/sidebar to answer less than 10 questions and check your eligibility to file a claim. Okay, so it's time to talk about this legal trouble that's now facing Grammy Award-winning rap artist Lil Durk, because he was arrested in Florida and charged with being part of a murder conspiracy that crisscrossed the country. Prosecutors allege that the rapper ordered a hit from Chicago on a man in Los Angeles. So it's a little bit of a convoluted story, but we're trying to make sense of it for you. We have 32-year-old Lil Durk, whose real name is Dirk Banks. He started his rise to fame in 2010 when he started a rap collective called Only the Family, or OTF. His most well-known songs are All My Life with J. Cole, Broadway Girls with Morgan Wallen. His featured part in Drake's Laugh Now, Cry Later has really brought him up to attention. But last week, U.S. Marshals had stopped Banks from leaving the country at a Florida airport and booked him into the Broward County Jail. He had been indicted on a charge of conspiracy to use interstate facilities to commit murder for hire resulting in death. He's also been hit with weapons charges, too. These are federal charges, by the way. Very, very serious charges. We'll talk more about it, but we've gotten our hands on an affidavit from an FBI agent who was investigating Banks' connection to what was this brazen shooting at an LA gas station. And we also have the indictment from the Central District of California. So we're going to be taking information from both documents. And now, because the court documents refer to the people involved in this case by their birth names, we're going to do the same. We'll talk about that in a second. But to get into this, I want to bring in celebrity defense attorney, friend of the show, Bradford Cohen, to talk more about this. Bradford, thanks so much for coming on. Really appreciate it. We have another rap star taken into custody on some pretty serious charges, very different than the Sean Combs case, which we've been talking so much about. Just what are your initial thoughts on the indictment, the affidavit, these initial documents, and the initial allegations alleged by prosecutors?
So I think that when we look at the indictment itself, what's so interesting is, and this happens quite often, they don't put all and everything that they have in the indictment because they don't have to. Right, less is more for an assistant U.S. attorney in the U.S. Attorney's office, and in this case, I think that's what they did. They gave them enough to know that they know what's going on, but not enough to know everything that's going on. I think obviously there's been some rumors that there's been a snitch among his group that has been wearing a wire for some time, and if that's the case, it's going to be a very difficult case for everyone involved, depending on how much talking there was going on. What I thought was interesting with the indictment is, a lot of things around Dirk basically revolve around funding, that he paid for airport, he paid for flights, he paid for hotels, he paid for car rentals, all these things that they utilized in this, quote-unquote murder for hire plot. So that's really where they're tying him in right now, but I think there's going to be more to come, and I think that there's going to be individuals that either will flip or that have already flipped, or there's going to be someone very close to him that was wearing a wire that would be willing to testify as to his involvement. Because his involvement right now is kind of tangentially involved, right? Where he's the funder, but there's no direct allegation that he said, hey, this is what I want done. There's an allegation that he spoke in code and he could have said this and all these different things, but there's no allegation that says, hey, this is what he said and this is what was going to happen.
And to be clear, when we're talking about this, obviously there are multiple people involved. You can't have a conspiracy unless there are several people involved, especially something like this. So although Banks might be the most famous of the names that are called out in the indictment, he's not the only one. I'm going to list them out. In the indictment, we have Kevon London Grant, we have DeAndre Dontrell Wilson, we have Keith Jones, David Brian Lindsay, and Asa Houston. And the indictment also names 5 co-conspirators, with Banks being one of them. In the indictment, he's referred to by his initials DB, or co-conspirator 1. So here's a little bit of background on this case, and it really starts in 2020, because that is when Banks was with his friend and fellow Chicago rapper King Von at an Atlanta nightclub. And Von had apparently got into a fight with a Georgia rapper known as Quando Rondo.
This nigga making shit up.
Rondo's
Dirk wasn't even there.
And shot King Von, killing him. Now, authorities say that Banks and his rap collective, OTF, the one that I mentioned, they wanted retribution. They wanted payback. So he allegedly made it known that he would pay a bounty for anyone who killed Rondo, who's, by the way, his real name is Tyquan Bowman. Now, in the court documents, he's named as TB. I know there's a lot of different names here, but stick with me. We're going to try to make sense of this. So investigators say that in 2022, so this is 2 years after that Atlanta shooting of King Von, a plan came together to kill Bowman. The criminal complaint that was filed against Banks includes an affidavit from an FBI agent, and she gives her summary of probable cause. The affidavit reads in part, quote, Banks is the leader of the Chicago-based rap collective known as Only the Family, or OTF. In addition to OTF's status as a rap collective, I know based on the investigation that OTF also acts as an association, in fact, of individuals who engage in violence, including murder and assault, at the direction of Banks and to maintain their status in OTF. For example, based on evidence collected during the investigation, including the interview of one of witnesses, I know that Banks put a monetary bounty out for an individual with whom Banks was feuding named TB. And then there's a footnote at the bottom of that page that reads, due to serious safety concerns, this affidavit does not provide the identity of these witnesses. Based on the FBI's investigation, I know that witnesses and or their family members have already received threats and or have been contacted in what appears to be attempts to influence their participation in this investigation. What do you make of that, Bradford?
So it's basic. You know, like a lot of these allegations, you can almost take each one of these and put them into every case that we've seen as of late, where witnesses are either contacted or witnesses are offered a monetary amount not to testify. And sometimes that comes with a civil case. You know, like if there's a civil matter that's outstanding, they might say, hey, listen, there's this civil matter that you could have, and we're going to give you a settlement of XYZ. The feds automatically take that as you're buying off a witness. So it just depends on the facts of those circumstances. Like, I've seen it many times where the feds read into it differently than you would if you just read it yourself, wherein people are trying to be influenced. A friend of a friend might contact you and say, like, hey, listen, this isn't a good idea to be a witness in a federal case. The feds take that as, oh, hey, this is, you know, Bob Smith influencing this witness because he's friends with this person who's friends with that person. A lot of times that doesn't shake out the way that they put it in the indictment, and they put that in the indictment specifically for bond purposes, right? So when you go in for bond, they say, hey, listen, this guy's trying to influence everybody, and here's all these things. But when you actually get into the case, sometimes those things don't shake out, and then it's already too late because you already moved for bond and you didn't get bond.
That's the same thing that's happening with Sean Combs. I mean, well, that's a little different because he's not charged specifically with obstruction, but it's part of the racketeering count. I read this indictment. I didn't see anything that Lil Durk is charged specifically with obstruction or witness tampering. It's more the conspiracy. There's also federal weapons charges. So does that give you pause too that he's not? I mean, again, maybe I'm wrong, that he wasn't directly charged with anything like witness tampering, obstruction.
Yeah, it always gives me pause. Whenever the feds throw an indictment in, it gives me pause right away. Because a lot of time...
Listen, what if you can start your own lending business?
What?
Other businesses get access to capital?
Straight up.
What if, by doing so...
Sometimes you'll see in the indictment, there's a lot of accusations in the indictment that when you start getting into it, it starts kind of flushing out the facts. They stretch what could be a basic fact, they stretch it into something that it's not. And I've seen this time and time again. So in this case, it could be individuals that are loosely associated with OTF or that is signed to the label or something else that has contacted a witness, and they're trying to put whatever they did onto Dirk Banks. So that's the issue here, right? Is that they're just lumping them all together. They'll just say, hey, listen, because this guy did that, obviously Dirk is the quote-unquote leader of OTF. He must have known what was going on, therefore he shouldn't get a bond because this is a dangerous gang, and etc. You notice they stopped short of saying this is a dangerous gang and said this is a dangerous association of individuals that are known as OTF, which I thought was interesting because generally speaking, when it comes to any of these rap groups, so like, there's OTF and YNW and YSL, and they all say like, hey, all of these nicknames, this is all a gang. And even though it's a record label, it's also a gang, and that's kind of their argument with every single one of these. And that's going to be their argument here. But I thought it was interesting in the indictment, it didn't specifically say gang, it said an association of individuals that go under OTF. I thought that was kind of interesting because I don't know what kind of evidence they have to say OTF is or is not a gang, legally, the legal definition.
I thought it was PTSD from the YSL trial. Let's not rush to call anything a gang because of all the trouble there. That's a separate conversation. We can have a long talk about that. Okay, but this I think could be problematic for Lil Durk, and I'll get into this because on the morning of October 24th, we have federal and local law enforcement. They execute these search warrants in Chicago. They arrest Grant, Wilson, Jones, Lindsay, Houston. And that is when they learned that Banks had booked multiple flights that were leaving the country. The affidavit says the FBI received notifications from U.S. Customs and Border Protection showing that Banks had been booked as a passenger on 2 international flights, a one-way flight from Miami to Dubai, United Arab Emirates, connecting through Doha, Qatar, scheduled to depart the evening of October 24th, and one-way flight from Fort Lauderdale to Switzerland, connecting via New Jersey, also scheduled to depart the evening of October 24th. Now, Banks didn't board either flight, but at approximately 6:40 p.m., the FBI received an additional CBP notification that Banks had been booked as a passenger on a private plane departing Miami and destined for Italy, scheduled to depart at approximately 9 p.m. At approximately 8 p.m., Banks was arrested by law enforcement in the vicinity of the departing airport. So, Bradford, that seems to be evidence that he might have been trying to leave the country. You tell me what you make of that.
So, I make a couple different things of that. So the first part of that is all the countries that he has, that Dubai is going to extradite you, Switzerland's going to extradite you. These countries are going to extradite. The only places that don't extradite are like you go to Vietnam, you go to Morocco. There's certain countries that don't extradite, like strictly don't extradite. All these other countries, even if they don't have a treaty with the U.S. for extradition, they're going to extradite because they rely on the U.S. for money. They rely on the U.S. for support. Switzerland, especially. Italy will deport you in about 10 seconds. They'll extradite you in 10 seconds. So I don't make much of whether or not he was going to escape and flee the.
Lil Durk, the Chicago artist whose popularity has blown up over the past few years, well, he is behind bars and headed for criminal court in California. Prosecutors say he orchestrated a plot to hire hitmen and take out a rap rival. As we're tracking the progress of this case, we're also taking a closer look at how we even got here and how an apparent feud turned deadly. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Well, Grammy Award-winning artist and reported multimillionaire Lil Durk, whose real name is Dirk Banks, is in a lot of trouble right now. The FBI says that he was part of a complicated murder for hire scheme that involved a shooting in the middle of the day at a Beverly Hills gas station in 2022. This actually resulted in the death of Savia Robinson, the cousin of Georgia rapper Quando Rondo, who prosecutors say was the actual intended target of this assassination, but he wasn't harmed in the shooting. According to prosecutors, Durk helped organize and pay for his alleged co-conspirators to travel from Chicago to Los Angeles in order to kill Rondo. Dirk had reportedly put out a hit on Rondo, offering money to anyone who would take him out. Now, multiple people were indicted in California court, including Dirk. Now, the named defendants in the indictment are Kevon London Grant, DeAndre Dontrell Wilson, Keith Jones, David Bryan Lindsay, and Asa Houston. Now, Grant was reportedly a top associate in the OTF organization. This is the family rap collective created by Dirk many years ago, but authorities say this group functions more like a criminal organization, with Dirk at the very top. But to get to the heart of this alleged conspiracy, we need to take a step back, and we need to understand what is this apparent long-running feud between Lil Durk and Quando Rondo, right? Why would Dirk want to kill him? And to help me sort all of this out, because it is a little bit of a complex timeline, I want to bring in Sean Sitaro, who is author of the book Dummy Boy, Tekashi 6ix9ine and the 9 Trey Gangsta Blood. Sean, thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Hey, Jesse, thanks for having me. And yeah, you are right. This is complicated. I don't know we'll be able to get totally to the bottom of it, but I will do my best. You know, there are some mysteries in this story.
Yeah, and first, before we get into that, when you saw these charges, were you surprised?
I mean, yes, in that they were very serious. Obviously, murder for hire is very serious.
I mean, it's crazy to think about it. Like, it used to cost millions to advertise on TV, and now, because of streaming, even with $50, like...
You gonna give me a motherfucking copyright claim, goof ass nigga.
Hey,